It would have been great if we had our intro music for episode 301 after the episode 300 spectacular. This is the first episode since episode 301. We're going to be talking about a little bit of Independence Day, 4th of July stuff, COVID 2.0, and we got a couple of emails. Maybe we'll do a mailbag segment at the end, depending on how long Jim's rants are. On episode 301 of the In the Tank podcast, as always, I'm your host, Donald Kendal. Joining me today, I've got Jim Lakely, VP of the Heartland Institute. How are you, good sir?
I'm just fine. There are things there are known knowns. That is, there are things that we know. There are known unknowns, which are things that we know that we do not know. And then there are unknown unknowns that we do not know what we do not know. That is one of the most famous quotes in political history in the last 20 years by one Donald Rumsfeld, who passed away this week. And what I always loved about watching that clip is how he talked to the media as if they were 4-year-olds, which is exactly what they deserve. The media's only gotten worse, so maybe we have to dumb it down to 3-year-olds. But I always love that quote.
Yeah, I'm not gonna mourn his passing.
I
War criminal.
Yep.
Yes,
well,
man.
whatever you say about that, but he was still that quote actually, and it ties into what we're going to talk about a little bit today with COVID, because we act as if as a society as if everything is a known and known. In COVID, it's mostly unknown unknowns, and we need to treat it that way.
Nate Myers.
What's
he
up?
is development coordinator at the Heartland Institute. Also joining us today. How's it going, sir?
I'm doing very well.
Missed out on episode 300, but that's
I
okay.
know. I missed the what is it called? What did you call it? The extravaganza, or what was
That's
it?
right. Yeah, spectacular. I think
Spectacular.
I'll call it. Jim didn't miss it. He was watching while traveling up to Minneapolis, I believe.
Yeah, I went to Minneapolis. I was there to watch a baseball game with some friends, and it was the very same day that Derek Chauvin was sentenced. So we got to see some protests too. Very exciting weekend.
Nice, very
Fun
exciting.
stuff.
So obviously we are on the precipice of our 4th of July weekend, Independence Day. Don't call it 4th of July. That's just a date. We're actually celebrating our independence. Gentlemen, you got any plans for that? Nate, you seem like a person that celebrates things.
Oh yeah. I think we're gonna be getting together with some of our neighbors and having a party. It'll be fun.
Nice. Jim, classic cookout, get some beers. What are you doing?
Beers, steaks, friends, no fireworks. Actually, there will be fireworks in my neighborhood because it's kind of an unregulated area of the county. So we'll be hearing a lot of those. This is actually the worst holiday for dogs all across the country.
Oh.
I don't have a dog right now, but everybody who has a dog out there kind of hates 4th of July for that reason, just because it drives their dogs crazy.
I can relate to that. My late dog was terrified of fireworks. So yeah, it was always a nightmare, but whatever. I was
All
never
right.
one of those people that went onto those like discussion boards on Facebook and complained about it, because I understood that that's how people like to celebrate our independence. So,
Well, I'm
Go
always
ahead.
fascinated by people who like go on message boards to complain about the fireworks. It's like, do you really think your internet comment is going to be like thousands of people across the state are celebrating? It's like, oh wait, guys, sorry, Sue Smith over in Cook County doesn't like it, so I guess we got to pack it up and go home.
yeah, if anything,
Her
you're
Chihuahua is shaking, so
you're encouraging people to do it.
yeah.
I found this thing just on the topic of fireworks. I found this thing that, because we've talked about this before, just like the state by state policy on fireworks. And 49 states plus the District of Columbia allow some or all types of consumer fireworks. The only state that bans all fireworks. Do you want to take a guess, anybody? I don't think you're going to get it.
The Socialist Republic of Illinois.
Nope.
Oh,
But we are one of 3 that limits it to just sparklers and other novelty items. So I'll give you partial credit on that one.
Somebody needs to tell my neighbors about that, though. I think I hear and see a lot more than just sparklers and other novelty products. I can tell you that. And
All right.
actually, driving through Wisconsin and Minnesota, like every exit, there's like 5 fireworks outlets. I mean, everybody in Illinois goes, they 20-minute drive to get your fireworks around here.
Yeah, no doubt.
I had to guess which state outright bans them. I'm going to guess Hawaii.
No, absolutely not. So along with Illinois, we got Ohio and Vermont that, again, only allow sparklers and other novelty items. Those are like the little like snappers and the pull string things.
Yeah.
The state that bans all consumer fireworks, Massachusetts.
Really? Massachusetts?
Yeah.
The state of John Adams, who wrote to his wife Abigail that actually he thought July 3rd would be the day we would celebrate, but that our Independence Day should be celebrated with all sorts of fireworks and explosions and revelry.
I mean,
Massachusetts bans what John Adams called for. That's great. That's
Yeah.
that's America right there.
I was going to say
In a nutshell.
it's like the birthplace of like the Boston Tea Party and like the foundational events of the American Revolution. Ironically, banning fireworks.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that John Adams also wrote to Abigail to make sure to pick up some big mortars when you come back from the store. So, so a little bit of irony, whatever. I also have a little bit of a trivia question about the national anthem. Did you know that the Star Spangled Banner was modeled after an old British drinking song?
Yes, I did.
You knew that?
Yeah,
Jim,
I knew that.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
I knew that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm giving out facts that everyone knows.
Well, not everybody knows.
I didn't know that. I thought that was really cool.
There's a ton of patriotic songs that started off being sung as drunken songs in
Well,
bars. My favorite is that "My Country 'Tis of Thee" is to the melody for "God Save the Queen."
Yeah,
God Save
that's
the
what
King.
I was just about to say. Yeah, we straight up just adapted it from the old British hymn, or not hymn, but song, whatever.
I do. Go ahead.
Royal Anthem, that is, yeah.
Royal Anthem. Thank you. Yeah.
I do have a little bit of policy stuff that we can inject into this. This is a chart. I think Andy might have it ready for us. A chart from the Tax Foundation. How high are beer taxes in your state? So as he pulls that up, I'll read the first couple paragraphs. The United States collects an excise tax on beer at the federal level ranging from 11 cents to 58 cents per gallon based on production, location, and quantity. But all 50 states and the District of Columbia also collect their own taxes on fermented malt beverages. While general sales taxes are tacked on after the price of goods is subtotaled, most states go straight to the retailer for beer excise taxes, collecting according to the quantity of beer sold, usually expresses a rate of dollars per gallon. I'm pretty sure that's how Nate consumes his alcohol, per gallon. Although,
indeed.
Although you can't see the taxes on your receipt, vendors pass along those costs to consumers in the form of higher prices. In most states, the legal burden of remitting beer excise taxes falls on retailers, but some collection variations exist from state to state. For instance, some states levy taxes further up the supply chain by taxing breweries, importers, or other wholesalers at a percentage of revenue generated at a fixed price per gallon, bottle, or case of beer sold. Many states also generate revenue by collecting license fees from beer distributors. So this is a chart. Nate, do you see this chart?
I am ashamed of my home state right now.
Okay. I was gonna have you guess, and I didn't realize that you were gonna be able to see it right off the bat, but I was gonna have you guess which states you thought tax beer the most.
I mean, it makes sense that the South would tax it more, because like the South never really truly like got rid of all of their prohibition laws. Like we still have like dry counties, if you know what dry counties are, where it's basically like, I mean, there are some counties where alcohol is still not sold, period. And then you have like a lot of what are called like blue laws, where like where I lived in South Carolina, you couldn't buy beer or wine on Sundays. So even at like Walmart or like liquor stores are closed on Sundays. And if you buy your alcohol from like Walmart or Target, they have like these like plastic tarps they'll like put over all of the alcohol in the alcohol section. And you're just not allowed to buy it.
Huh. Yeah, I was Jim, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't there still like ABC stores, like government-owned liquor stores in certain states?
Oh yeah, we have them in South Carolina. I didn't know that
Really?
wasn't a thing everywhere until I moved up here.
I'm shocked by that. Like the fact that you can't just buy like a giant thing of vodka at like the grocery store. You have to go to like a specific government store to do that. Like that seems something straight out of like the 1800s.
I mean, it's not required. Like they basically just compete with other liquor stores there.
Great.
When I moved from Pennsylvania in 1998 was the last time I lived full-time in Pennsylvania. And then we had state stores. You could only buy alcohol in two places in Pennsylvania in the late 90s. I don't know what the law is today. And maybe one of our listeners or maybe our government relations department can correct me on this. But back then in the day, you could buy liquor only in what they called a state store. So that was a state-run liquor store. Or you go to a beer distributor. And so you would have to buy an enormous case of beer from a beer distributor. Around near my house, there was a drive-through. You would just pull in and say, give me 2 cases of Iron City, and then pop your trunk, you put them in the back, and it's cool, and you drive out. But I was just amazed that when I moved to Virginia, you could just go into a 7-Eleven and pick up a 6-pack. You could also buy, you could only buy 6-packs actually in Pennsylvania back then from a bar. So you could go into a bar and say, give me 6 Bud Lights, 6-packs, please. And they'd give you a 6-pack and you'd buy it in cash from the bar. It's just weird. These laws, and this was, the blue laws in Pennsylvania were quite strict, and you could not get any alcohol on Sundays, for decades. I don't know if you can do it today or not, which is actually kind of amazing because, as my mug here shows, Steeler fans, we love to tailgate. We love our beer. So everybody would have to go to the beer distributor on Saturdays to get enough beer to make sure they had enough for the game.
Yeah, they're like already floating the idea of having some type of time limit on when you could buy beer or alcohol in Chicago, right, Nate? Isn't that like a thing that's being proposed out there? Yeah,
I hadn't heard that. No.
Yeah, I don't think it's passed or anything like that, but it's being floated, a curfew that you couldn't buy. Maybe it's specific types of alcohol, maybe it's hard alcohol, I'm not sure, after like 10 o'clock or something. So yeah, it's just like another like nanny state thing. And I feel like I'm neglecting our listening only audience, those that are listening to this on a Friday. You can check out our live stream, the video component of this, on YouTube and Facebook Live on Thursday if you want to tune in a day early. But those people that are just audio-only listeners, the top 5 for most taxes on beer for a state. Number 5 is South Carolina, 77 cents. Number 4, Kentucky, 89 cents. Hawaii comes in at number 3, 93 cents. Alaska, number 2, 107. And the state that taxes beer the most, Tennessee, $1.29.
I find it interesting that the beer taxes are highest in 2 states in which whiskey is their most famous alcohol, or their most famous consumption of alcohol. So I wonder if that has anything to do with it. And I also love that with only 6 cents at number 48 out of 50 states is the state of Wisconsin, which they love their beer up in Wisconsin. So, that makes sense too.
Yeah, Missouri, 6 cents as well. And then Wyoming is the least taxed at 2 cents. California and Texas are tied, 20 cents. New York, 14 cents. That comes in 39th. And Illinois, 28th with 23 cents. So I was actually kind of surprised when I didn't have in mind what Nate was bringing up. But when I first clicked on this link, I thought for sure the blue nanny states were going to have the highest taxes, whether it's an excise tax, some type of sin tax, or anything like that. I thought for sure the big outliers of this would have been California, New York, and Illinois. So I was kind of surprised by that.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with kind of like the Bible Belt, and the more religious parts of the country were much more like on board with prohibition. So I think it kind of took us a lot longer to get rid of some of those laws.
And you see that the lowest beer tax states are Oregon, where there's a lot of microbrews, Pennsylvania, which has a lot of breweries, like Wisconsin, like I just mentioned, and of course Missouri is the home of Busch. And so, it seems that for a long time, the biggest corporations in those states have quite a bit of influence on how tax policy is done.
Yeah.
Oh, a little insider information there. That's pretty interesting there.
I know my beer, bud. No problem.
Yeah. Jim brews his own bathtubs full of beer in his basement. So. Oh, wait, don't tell anybody that. You're going to have the state government coming down on you.
The ATF knocking on your door.
That's right. Or just busting through it with a tank.
Yeah, shoot your dog.
So again, for 4th of July, you enjoy your beer and everything, all that. But it seems like there's not going to be quite as many celebrations this year. I was going to say compared to last, but I think there's probably even less 4th of July celebrations, Independence Day celebrations last year. It seems like we're not past the fear of COVID shutting down all of these things. So if you just Google, or DuckDuckGo, Independence Day canceled, you'll see a spattering of different articles, in your locality about which townships are celebrating, which ones aren't, what cities are canceling parades, and which ones aren't. That is very much the case here in Illinois. There is numerous places that are not doing any type of parades or any type of fireworks celebration out of fear of COVID.
Okay, I just have to interject here because this really gets under my skin because it's all political grandstanding, and frankly, it feels like a spit in the face to people who just want to like be patriotic and celebrate the 4th of July, because there were no places in Chicago or Chicagoland that had a problem accommodating the pride parades that happened all month long. I mean, like, where's the COVID hesitation for that? You know, they were happy to accommodate, their demonstration permits and, like their request for certain roads to be blocked off for the parade. Like, all of that was fine. No concern there. But God forbid we want to shoot some fireworks off from Navy Pier. Like, that's too much. It doesn't even require people to be there in person. We watch it from our house. Like, anyways.
No, you're right. And that's kind of the direction I was going in. One of these towns that have been kind of being used as the poster child for this type of hypocrisy is close to us, Evanston, Illinois, where they hosted parades for Juneteenth and Gay Pride, throughout the month of June. However, Independence Day parade was canceled because of COVID.
Yeah, a lot of those traditional fireworks shows are canceled.
Yeah, so that the newscaster that chimed in too. Yeah, he knows. So Jim, you were, when I kind of told you that I wanted to talk about this, you were like, "Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started." But I mean, it's because a lot of these articles will excuse this. They'd be like, "Well, these decisions are made months in advance." But does that fly with you?
Well, not if a city is having a Juneteenth parade, which it was literally made a national holiday the day before Juneteenth. I mean, how can you organize a parade already? And then, and of course, pride parades everywhere, and there's no problems with that. It reminds me of as we discovered in the year 2020, COVID is a very dangerous communicable disease, except if you're protesting with Black Lives Matter or protesting against Donald Trump. Then the disease it doesn't spread, and it's not a danger to anybody, and it's all just fine. These are. I don't know what to really make about Juneteenth is okay, and pride parades are okay, and July 4th, or I should say Independence Day parades are not okay. I try not to think that our government is really being this vindictive against its people. That Independence Day celebrations it's the most important community celebration in almost every community. It is a celebration of the greatness of America, and that gets canceled because of COVID. Again, everything has to be because of COVID. Just say what you want to say. Just cancel Independence Day if you're Evanston, Illinois, because you're a hard leftist city and you actually don't like America.
Right.
Say that.
Right. Be honest.
Everything else is okay, but and we're just going to say COVID so that people aren't literally showing up with pitchforks and torches at City Hall demanding a return to Independence Day. Look, Joe Biden himself promised us. He promised us if you all get the vaccine, if enough of you do your part, maybe you'll be able to get back together and go outside and celebrate Independence Day. It was going to be the symbolic thing that we get independence from COVID. We get permission from our government to celebrate the greatness of this country if we all do what we're told. Well, we did what we were told, and Evanston, Illinois, and other cities across the country are like, you know what? Screw it. We're going to skip it again this year. We're going to keep the misery going on as long as possible, because having a miserable populace is actually beneficial to government. It gives us more control. It keeps you down. Happy people are people who have confidence in their country and in their ability to speak, tend to be troublesome. So as long as we keep everybody miserable and punish them for not doing the right thing, even though we did it, that's kind of the interests of government. I just would like the government to be honest about it, because anybody with an open mind or with an operating brain can see what's going on, and it's not good.
I say this with hesitancy, out of fear that I'm going to be accused of trying to incite an insurrection. But I wonder if there's going to be any spontaneous 4th of July Independence Day parades that just kind of happen.
I'll do that. Please accuse me of trying to cite an insurrection. People should absolutely disobey the law and shoot off loud, obnoxious fireworks. You should absolutely do that. And if they want to come and get me, I'll give you my frickin' address. It makes me so angry. The snot-nosed little brats, ungrateful little sniveling turds that freaking cancel the 4th of July. But yeah, no, you'll get out there and take off your shirt and march in the gay pride parade, and you'll a day before something is made a national holiday, you'll plan out a whole parade for that. But God forbid anybody want to show even a slight amount of patriotism on the 4th of July. And I'm not even a conservative. Half the time I don't even feel like we should be patriotic about certain things, because I feel like we have no reason to be patriotic about certain things. But I think any American should be able to sign on to just a little bit of patriotism on the 4th of July. Like there is something that almost everybody can find to celebrate on the 4th of July, even if it's, something that people typically wouldn't consider patriotic. Like it can be subjective like that. But anyways, I'm done.
Nate's coming in hot today.
He is
coming in hot.
Yeah.
It's a pet peeve of mine. I can't stand it.
Well, I think there's a lot more to be patriotic about. There's a lot about this country, almost everything about this country to love. And as you were ranting there, Nate, I was remembering, do you know when fireworks were actually okay and nobody made a big deal about it? When Antifa was firing live fireworks at the cops in places like Portland. So then, so we're going to combine this fireworks and when protests are okay, and now they're not. And so we can't have a parade. We can't have fireworks. And as one of our viewers here on the YouTube stream just put up, hey, remember last year when all those private fireworks celebrations went on 4th of July? And in fact, there were a lot of people that were resistant, and they were getting their fireworks and setting them off and having parties. And, to me, the most patriotic thing to do is to celebrate Independence Day like a normal American, like everything is normal, because everything is.
And what's more patriotic than illegally shooting off fireworks to be spiteful towards the local government? That sounds the most American thing possible to me.
Yeah,
I highly encourage it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Portland just passed some new law or something like that, or at least regulations that say that fireworks are only okay if you're shooting them at police during protests.
Right.
But they're not okay if you're using it to celebrate anything.
Or if you're in
using
Chicago.
them properly.
Or if you're in Chicago shooting them at a Columbus statue, you can do that too.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. So restaurants are opening. Mask mandates are dwindling. Sporting events have fans in the stands again. Seems like we're finally waking up from this government-induced hysterical nightmare that we've all been living in for the past 16 months. But before you go out into public and take a deep breath of fresh air, unencumbered by a face mask, prepare yourself for a cold shower of new COVID fear. That's right. The news is abuzz with stories of a new strain of COVID called the Delta variant. This new strain is supposedly more contagious, more deadly. First identified in India, the Delta variant has been spreading across the globe. The UK and Israel have been the hardest hit so far, but the variant has been seen in a number of countries, including the United States. COVID is back, and this time in 3D, coming to a theater near you. Have you guys been hearing these stories about Nate's just distraught over this.
I'm so over this. I'm beyond over this.
Have you guys been hearing this about the new strain that's going to be?
Yes, I have. And first off, I want to point out how much of it just an outright lie and how propagandist this is. Because when have you ever heard of a disease mutating and getting both more contagious and deadlier?
Right.
That's just unscientific. That's not true. Diseases don't do that. You don't have a disease occasionally, very rarely will a disease mutate and become both more contagious and deadlier. Most of the time it gets more contagious and less deadly, or it gets more deadly but less contagious. It never does both, or at least in very rare cases. And there's absolutely no science to back up the fact that it's more deadly or more contagious. It's not true, especially if it just mutated and we're just now hearing about it. How do you have the data on that to prove it?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a very good point. The first article that I have here is from the New York Times, titled "Masks Again, Delta Variant Speed Prompts Reconsideration of Precautions." So due to the spread, the World Health Organization restated their recommendations to continue social distancing and wear masks, even if you are vaccinated. LA County echoed the same recommendation and reinstated their indoor mask mandate. New York City and Chicago have already teased the comeback of different mask mandates. So the first time that I started hearing about these different variants was when the numbers of just COVID started to just generally go down. And at that time, I think they were talking about the South African variant or something like that. There was a couple that were being discussed at that time. And I thought at the time, oh, well, here it is. This is what they're going to do to keep all of these restrictions and government stimulus programs in place. So my knee-jerk reaction when I hear about this like Delta variant is to dismiss the whole thing as just like another scare story. And like, I know that that's not the most like scientific or academic approach to this, but after like living with all of this misinformation and all this overreaction for the last like 16 months of this, like, can you blame me for having that type of reaction?
Well, I mean, this whole process has been anything but scientific. That's why I've been skeptical from the start. I mean, and being skeptical. Oh God. Anyways, being skeptical of this new Delta strain is just par for the course. They're overreacting and blowing out of proportion because, like you said, the government is its powers are starting to wane on COVID. People are less afraid. They're going out and, conducting their normal lives again. And that means less power for the federal government. And didn't we call this on like numerous podcasts? I remember clearly saying that as soon as people start getting their vaccines and we reach herd immunity, they're going to come up with something else just to maintain that grip on power. And sure enough, like clockwork, here they go.
Yeah, I mean, Jim, do you have the same type of knee-jerk reaction when you hear stories like this? Or is this like, or do you consider this a new thing that we have to, take seriously and gauge, the threats and all of that? And what's your initial reaction when you hear this?
Well, what do you think? I mean, anyone who's listened to this podcast knows what I think on this. And I have also mentioned in the past that one of the most disappointing things about all of this was how I thought that at best, the American people would only put up with this BS for maybe a few weeks, maybe a couple months. And now it's been more than a year. And so many of our fellow Americans are just laying down and accepting whatever the government tells them to do without any question, because they have been made by their media and by their government to be deathly afraid of a disease that is so terrible. Most people have to be told they had it. Right. And so here we are locking down our societies. We have friends in Canada. We're planning our 14th International Conference on Climate Change in Las Vegas on October 15 through 17. We hope to see you guys there. If not in person, then you can watch it here on this channel online. But we have friends in scientists from Canada that we have scheduled on our conference. And as of right now, at this moment, Canada is locked down like a prison state. It's as hard to get into Canada today as it was to get into Romania in 1975. It's like the Iron Curtain has fallen across our northern border. And as of right now, they're like, hey, we're not allowed to leave. We have to quarantine for 2 weeks if they do let us leave, and nobody from America is allowed in here without all these hoops you got to run through. So as bad as it is in the United States, it's worse in other countries. In Australia, because of this stupid Delta variant, which, by the way, is, as Nate had hinted at, is actually it is more contagious, but it is much, much less dangerous than the other one was. But who cares? It's COVID. It's COVID. We're all going to die. We all have to take measures right now. We have to give up our freedom again to make sure we're all safe. I would rather be free than safe. And most Americans, and on Independence Day, you should be thinking about this. You want to be free. It's that much more important to be free than to be safe. But in Australia, residents in Sydney are being kept in their homes. And now, do you know how many COVID cases they have active right now or at least it was yesterday in Sydney, a city of millions of people? 200. They're locking down the entire city for 200 freaking cases. And so again, as I mentioned, the most disappointing things I've ever experienced was how the American people laid down and took this. You have to resist right now. This has to stop. I've been saying this for a year, but it has to stop. This Delta variant is not, as mentioned, it is not as deadly as the original COVID virus that came into this country from China, by the way. And you have to resist these mask mandates and these lockdowns. If you go into a store and they say, because of Delta variant, we are requiring you to mask up when you come in, turn around, get in your car and go somewhere else.
Don't comply.
Not all of these stores will have that. Do not comply. Complain. This has to stop. They're trying to condition you to be a subject and not a citizen of the United States.
To be compliant.
Yes, and on the weekend coming up of Independence Day, if you can't take a stand on this now, then maybe this country really is over. Maybe this is the new normal. I want to go back to normal, not the new normal, and I hope everybody else does too.
Well, and Jim, I just have to say, I don't think, and this is kind of my biggest critique of the American people in general right now, is that I honestly don't think these lockdowns would have lasted very long if Americans weren't so freaking comfortable. I'm censoring what I would really like to say, but people are, that's why think about like what the average American did during lockdown. They sat on the couch, stuffed their face, and watched Netflix for a year.
And got government money.
That's
to me, that's the biggest part of all of this.
Yeah, the money, for sure.
If there was really, like the pain of the economy being shut down by the government without this just endless stream of freshly printed money because of modern monetary theory, people would be way less okay with the government shutting it down based on what they were seeing in their day-to-day, in their town around them. They'd be way less okay with it.
But I think the money is part of it, but not all of it, because like there were millions of Americans financially struggling throughout the pandemic. So I think the money was part of it, but like for most Americans, they didn't lose their job, and most Americans were able to work from home, or some varying level of that. But I truly believe it was the comfort part of it. We all remained interconnected because of the internet. We all had those comforts because we could get food delivered, and we could just watch TV and work in our sweatpants. But if all of that had been available, if America wasn't so blessed to be so economically prosperous, I think the lockdowns would have lasted a couple of weeks, and then people would have been so angry and distraught over being cooped up in their houses that they would have revolted.
Yeah, I know you have this in the show notes, and we might get to the story in a minute, Donald. But about the COVID class system in this country, and that I said it back a year ago, and I'm still waiting for it today. If it's so dangerous for instance, teachers to go back into the classroom, why haven't we seen piles of dead 7-Eleven clerks out there on the street? What about Uber drivers, or your Uber Eats driver, or your DoorDash guy crashing into a pole because he dropped dead in the middle of a delivery? Where are all of those cases? Where are all of those deaths? They don't exist. And the fact that we don't even have enough common sense in this country anymore to ask those questions and to think, wow, if grocery store workers, the clerk at 7-Eleven, if the cops, if firemen, if doctors and nurses, if all of these essential, quote unquote, essential workers are not, dropping dead in the street, maybe we've been lied to by our government about all of this. And especially maybe the teachers unions are taking special privileges to basically, redefine their job and not work for a year in school and make our children suffer and get behind in school because it's a power play. And so, at long last, can we start to actually talk about COVID in a way that's sensible and that is science-based and not politically based and not control-based? Because all of it's fear-based. And that's exactly right. Exactly right, Nate. This is all about continuing to keep us afraid. Don't fall for it.
Yeah, I forgot what I was listening to or who was talking to me about this, but the fear aspect of this really is troubling because, when the people are wearing their masks, they're social distancing, they're keeping themselves indoors as much as possible. That's all based on fear, right? And those are the people that are like held up as being brave when it's actually the complete opposite of reality, right?
That's
and
a good
so
point.
Fear has become this virtue that people are trying to signal. And it's just like, that's just such a bad trajectory to kind of go in. But
if you're not afraid, you're a bigot.
Exactly. Or not scientific,
Right.
But
you're a science denier.
So with all of these topics, generally speaking, that we talk about on this podcast, I have a very bad habit of seeing what people are talking about it on Twitter. So I'll just look up Delta variant on Twitter and see just what the buzz is on Twitter, and I know it's not a good sample selection of America. It's very obviously leaning in one direction, but you would think the world's coming to an end. If you just scroll through a little bit of what are the top trending things that when you look up Delta variant, you would think the world is coming to an end. And you would probably be praising all of the different lockdowns and everything that people are doing, the governments are doing to make sure that we're safe. Like this is being touted as being like some super mutated strand of COVID that's going to just run wild on us, regardless of if you have a vaccine. And it's just like the sentiment, generally speaking, is like we're back to day one. And that is like horrifying. Thankfully, because of some of the people I follow, I am privy to certain articles that have given a little bit more reality check to that type of sentiment. One piece that I have in the show notes is The Federalist, titled Ben Domenech, who's I think he runs that site, right?
Yeah, he's publisher of The Federalist. Former Heartlander, by the way. Former member of our staff.
We must resist resurgence of lockdown lunacy over COVID Delta variant. So it talks about his comments when he was on some Fox show, or he was
substituting for Laura Ingraham.
Oh, so he's hosting it? That's
yep.
cool. So in this article, there's a few interesting quotes. Epidemiologist Peter McCullough railed the lockdowns as completely unnecessary. Quote, the Delta variant is the mildest one we've seen so far. And even though it'll proportionately take up a greater number of cases, and we expect this in the United States, it has a very low mortality. Appears to be the most treatable strain that we've seen so far, McCullough explained. We're going to keep patients out of the hospital at a very low risk of mortality. Dr. Harvey Risch of the Yale School of Public Health said corporate outlets and government officials are dramatically overreacting to the new variant. Quote, this is a very mild variant, and the cases are going to go up, whereas at the same time, the mortality is flat, near zero, Risch said. So basically what the reaction to is a flu or a bad cold for most people who get it. So this is a thing that you'll see if you go on Twitter. Like I said, they'll talk about the number of cases that are skyrocketing in the UK and
surging.
Right. Yeah. And you know, to their credit, if you go to the one site that I kind of keep track of all these numbers, Worldometers, if you go to like the UK page and the daily new cases, you'll see that, you know, they had a similar spike, you know, during the winter months that we saw all over the world, to which it like bottomed out in the last couple of months. And then just starting at maybe the middle of May, we see like this new spike coming, and it looks pretty sinister, and it looks like a sign of things to come when you're just looking at this with no context. But if you just scroll down a little bit, just takes a few flicks of the thumb, you can go down to the daily deaths, and those are still basically at zero. And I know that this is a lagging indicator, but it doesn't lag by months. No. So it might lag by a couple of weeks, but definitely not months. And what we are seeing is not an increase in deaths. It really seems, like Nate suggested, that yes, maybe this is a more contagious and it's more likely to spread to people, despite the fact that, you know, more than half the population is vaccinated at this point. But the degree at which it'll affect you is not nearly as much as the first strain of this COVID. Jim, anything to kind of add on to that? I do have this Huffington Post piece that I want to read because I think it's hilarious. But just before I get into that, is there anything you want to say? Add on?
Well, I actually had a couple things. I think we should, I would encourage our listeners and viewers to go to heartlanddailynews.com and click on Healthcare News, which is one of our publications here at the Heartland Institute. There's actually right now, there's a lot of really terrific stories about COVID death. Here's one: COVID deaths decline, vaccine interest flattens, and it explores whether the idea of, you know, are the vaccines working, or do we have herd immunity because people have already had it? There's another one here. CDC data shows COVID-19 was a pandemic just for the elderly. And, you know, going back to staying home and lockdowns and masks and all this stuff, a University of Chicago economist did a study and found that it was safer to actually go to work than it was to stay home during the pandemic, which is, you know, great. I actually came to work. Don't tell the government. Well, hell, you can know this, J.B. Pritzker. It's just fine. Our governor. I came to work actually every day during the pandemic. I consider the Heartland Institute an essential business. Even if I was here all by myself to answer the mail and answer the phone and get the mail and all that stuff, I came into work every day.
Okay, I was here
because
one day.
I refused. You were there. Nate was here as well.
I also broke the law proudly.
But we all broke the law and came into work. And actually, it turns out the science says we were safer coming into work than we were staying at home. So it's
almost, Jim, it's almost like we're being vindicated on everything we said from the start. It's shocking, really.
Yes, but we're being vindicated almost as much as Donald Trump. So I consider that pretty good.
But like us at home, Jim also didn't wear pants, even though he was working at the office. So
he's actually still not. He shouldn't stand up right now. It'd be a shocker.
Yeah, but a theme I think we can get to as we work through some of these great stories on COVID and the Delta variant and all this other stuff is that trust in government is now at an all-time low. I mean, nobody should trust government and experts again. And nobody should actually be doing what the government tells them to do without some resistance to it. They do not have your best interests at heart. This Delta variant is proof of that. This is not as deadly as they say it is. They are lying to you.
And
They're telling you that you are in danger of death unless you mask up or stay home or lock down or don't go to, don't celebrate Independence Day, or you could die. Don't believe these idiots anymore. They're conditioning you to be ruled.
Well,
they're not conditioning you to be a free person anymore. They want to decondition you to be a free person. So you shouldn't trust government anymore, because that's what, that's all this last year has proven, is that government cannot be trusted. Government bureaucrats can't be trusted. They are not interested in the science. They're interested in power and exercising that power over you.
Yep. Well, and I think the Fauci emails highlighted perfectly what we had been saying for a long time. And I've never quite understood this, and historically speaking, this reliance on fact checkers, or I'm sorry, not fact checkers, on experts, quote unquote, to lead society really ramped up after World War II, because we relied on, experts for, in their various fields to kind of lead the war effort. But this reliance on experts has been proven to be a falsity, because if you look at, say, I don't know, the Facebook fact checker that ended up being directly connected to the Wuhan lab, he was fact checking information for Facebook. The guy who was supposedly an expert on COVID-19 turned out to be one of the guys making millions of dollars off of gain of function research. So right. Why should we be relying on these quote unquote fact checkers and experts when they're just as corrupt as the politicians enforcing the lockdowns?
Yeah, I do want to say that, do I know that this is not going to be like some dangerous new strain? No, I don't know that. I am very skeptical, and I want some hard evidence this time before we lock down the entire country and throw ourselves back into this, everyone hide in their basement like Joe Biden. But I want hard evidence before we overreact like this.
I don't trust their evidence.
Sure. But Jim talking about, Sydney, Australia or whatever, locking down after 200 cases, we cannot allow that to happen this time around. Also, if it does turn out to be more contagious, more deadly, you're only partially protected by the current vaccines. They're already talking about new boosters and all of this stuff. If all of this is the case, we have to revisit some of these strategies that were in place in, the Denmarks and the Swedens, where they didn't just do total blanket one size fits all lockdown across the entire country, regardless of if you're in a massive metropolitan city or some rural town in downstate Illinois or something. We need to revisit what was that one? We talked about it. They talked about it in the healthcare news. It was the Great Barrington Proposal or something, where it was just
the Great Barrington Declaration.
That's it. Yeah, where it was essentially, if you are under the age of 40, go live your life. We'll take care of the people that are susceptible to this, and over the age of 60. We'll take care of them and make sure that they're safe and all of that stuff, and they have access to everything that they need to survive during all of this. But if you're under the age of 40, go out and live your life. Those are the things that we need to make sure happen if this does actually turn out to be worse than what some of this evidence is pointing it out to be.
It won't be.
This is the only disease I can think of in which it is we are pretending that it's not treatable, that you either get the vaccine and protect yourself from this, or you die, that there isn't any treatments. And in fact, Brett Weinstein is if you ever saw the movie No Safe Spaces, if you remember that professor who got basically railroaded out of the hard leftist Evergreen College in Oregon, that's Brett Weinstein. Yeah. And
he's a hardcore progressive.
He is a man of the left.
Right.
And he has a channel here on YouTube called the Dark Horse Podcast. And it has been demonetized because he's a biologist.
And
so he knows his
evolutionary biologist.
Thank you. An evolutionary biologist. So he knows his science, and he knows scientists who know viruses very well and know treatments very well. And he has used his channel to advocate that, I'm not going to say the words and I'm not going to get into specifics, because his channel got demonetized because he was telling people that hey, there are treatments for COVID. You don't have to get the vaccine, or if you've already had the virus, you have a lot of immunity to it, if not full immunity to it. And if you happen to get it and it's a severe case, there are treatments you can take. There are drugs you can take before you get it that act as prophylaxis for that. And so just him talking about that has gotten his channel demonetized and probably is going to be banned before too long if he keeps talking about it. But he vowed to keep doing it because it is the truth. And he is a scientist. He's like, science is about talking. You have to be able to explore different ideas. But instead, just like it is on climate, on COVID, this is all dogma. There is no scientific inquiry going on in here. Although I should say there is some. There are studies out there that say that, certain drugs can do a great job of treating COVID, that you're, 7 times more likely to survive or have a very mild case of it if you take certain drugs or you have certain treatments, put upon you. But we're not allowed to talk about that on this channel. We're not allowed to talk about it in the public. And again, this is why you should have no trust in government whatsoever. They're not only lying to you, they're keeping you from listening to anybody who might disagree with them. It's not on just on COVID, it's on all these other topics as well.
Well, and if people want to know what those drugs are, so we don't mention them and get our channel banned, I suggest people go listen to the recent episode where he was on Joe Rogan, because he explains everything, all the different names of the drugs and where you can find them and all that good stuff.
Yeah, he was on there's another good podcast out there I could recommend called Trigonometry that my wife got me hip to. It was pretty good. He was a guest on there, and the hosts there were like, "Look, we can't have our channel demonetized. You cannot say those words. We actually can't even refer to these drugs in an opaque way because we're that worried about it." That's the kind of control big tech has over our people say the big tech isn't too powerful. The big tech doesn't need to be reined in. People can't even say what they want. People can't even read things that might be printed somewhere for fear the big tech will smash them. And so that's where we are right now. And that's not a very good place to be. And again, we have to resist this. Resist this in every way you can. We cannot allow this regime, basically, this regime of fear and non-science and politics to rule us forever.
Right. Yeah, so like I said about Twitter, if you go on there, you look this up, it seems like the apocalypse that's on our doorstep. But then I also found this article from the Huffington Post, which is very far from being a right-wing rag or anything like that. In fact, it's a left-wing rag. Article is titled, "Is it hay fever or the Delta variant? How to tell the difference?" Because you might not be able to tell the difference just by having it. So you got to read this Huffington Post article to find out. So it starts off, the symptoms of the Delta variant may not be all that different to some of the signs of hay fever, prompting confusion for many people, especially with the latter proving particularly bad this year. Despite the official NHS-listed symptoms of COVID-19 being a continuous cough, loss of sense of taste or smell, and a fever, it was recently revealed the Delta variant is more likely to present with symptoms including a runny nose. Professor Tim Spector, an expert in genetic epidemiology from King's College London, said the variant, which first originated in India, is more like a bad cold in the younger population, and that people don't realize that. So how could you tell the difference? He said young people might get symptoms that, quote, feel like a bad cold or some funny off feeling, and said that those who do experience these should stay home or order a lateral flow test. So what are the symptoms of hay fever? It includes sneezing and coughing, runny nose, itchy, red or watery eyes, itchy throat, mouth, nose, and ears, loss of smell, pain around your temples and forehead, headache, earache, feeling tired. So if you have those symptoms, you might have this new deadly Delta variant. So how can you spot the difference? Hay fever symptoms tend to come and go after several days, and they're usually able to improve with antihistamine medication, but COVID symptoms are likely to be more persistent and get worse before they get better. You're more likely to feel lethargic and have a sore throat with COVID, unlike hay fever.
Hold on. So they're saying the way you tell the difference is that it gets worse before it gets better. Oh, you mean like literally every other disease on the face of the planet? Like that? Like literally they're saying that like you won't be able to spot the difference between these two diseases, but like one you should be way more scared of. So like they have the same symptoms and the same outcome, but like one you should be terrified of, and the other one, don't worry about. It's just hay fever.
With the Delta variant, headaches are more likely to feel heavy and affect the front of your head and eyes. The cough also tends to be dry and continuous. If you have any doubt, You have to get a PCR COVID test if you are experiencing one of the 3 main symptoms. However, if your symptoms are more reminiscent of a cold and you want peace of mind, you can order a lateral flow test via the government's website. End of article. That was literally the entire article that was trying to tell you whether or not you have a hay fever or this new deadly disease that's spreading across the country like wildfire. Like, isn't this like those 2 things of just like the impending apocalypse that if you just scroll through Twitter, like that's the the reality that they're trying to paint, versus this Huffington Post article that says, yeah, you might just have a cold. Like, isn't there like a huge problem here?
The end of the world looks very similar to hay fever. That's what I'm hearing. You won't be able to tell the difference, but it's the end of the world.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, it's like COVID is such a terrible disease that most people have to be told they had it or have it in order to get it diagnosed. Look, as we mentioned before, the Delta variant appears by all experience so far to be less deadly than regular COVID, which itself, while serious, is actually not that deadly to anybody who is not obese, who is not over the age of 75 or 80. And, people who are under the age of 50 are virtually at no risk, statistically 0 risk to die. And yet we have upended our entire society. We have ruined our economies. We have instituted a global regime of fear, really, I think is the way to put it. And then we have all of these vaccination mandates that are going on. You'll see stories. I think speaking of Delta, I think it was Delta Airlines or another airline that mandates that all employees must get the vaccine or they're fired. Now, hopefully, when you talk about what can you do to stop this, maybe you sue and say you cannot make me. I feel like, yeah, you cannot require me to undergo a medical procedure for basis of my employment, especially an experimental vaccine. And the only network that I saw this on Fox. I don't have cable anymore, so I don't have Fox News, but I saw a clip of this on YouTube. For as long as it'll be up there, I guess it's probably already taken down. But they had a press conference with these parents whose children had adverse reactions to the COVID vaccines, and there was this horrible. There was a girl. Her name was Maddie DeGarry, and she's 12 years old. She's in a wheelchair now. She was perfectly healthy, and her mother wanted her to be part of the society that young people that got the vaccine to help the world. If children get the vaccine and show that it's safe, and then more people will get the vaccine, and you'll be part of doing something important for the whole world. And instead, she apparently has ruined her life. She has a multitude of debilitating conditions. She's in a wheelchair. She has a tube in her nose, a feeding tube in her nose. She's got she has memory loss. I mean, her daughter has been taken away from her by this vaccine
right now.
Right. And so, is that a typical reaction to a vaccine? No. But how common are these reactions? Do we really know that there's that database VAERS? Yes, the database VAERS where people report vaccine side effects. There's more reports about these vaccines than there has been for anything that they've ever had in the VAERS database.
And I just got to interject. Real quick. They said that per 100,000 people, there's something like 4 deaths related to vaccines and like 12 adverse reactions. And that little girl would be considered an adverse reaction. So if you extrapolate that by 100,000 people, if everybody in the U.S. were to get vaccinated, that's like thousands and thousands of people who either die or have severe adverse reactions to these vaccines. Like that's not nothing. That's thousands of people's lives that are ruined because you're virtue signaling to them to get the vaccine when they don't freaking need it. And my favorite part of that video, and as sad as that situation is, honestly, it kind of seems like you reap what you sow, because the mom said, we're a pro-science family. Well, guess what, honey? That's what you got for being quote unquote pro-science. Now your daughter's life is effed up for the rest of her life because you wanted to virtue signal to other parents to get their children vaccinated.
Well, that's a little harsh, but it's not unfair, I think. But it's
life's harsh. So it's your daughter being debilitated for the rest of your life. That's harsh.
This is it's a horrible tragedy, and that's the thing here is that you can go into any drugstore or any grocery store pretty much all across America right now. right after this podcast, walk into a grocery store and get a COVID vaccine. Can you get a T-cell antibody test anywhere? I mean, do you have to schedule an appointment to get one? Will they even give you one? This idea that having the disease, every other disease, if you've had it of this kind of viruses, if you've had the disease that gives you immunity, in the future to that disease, or to having a severe reaction as last time if you happen to catch that virus again. This is the only one where we pretend that isn't the case. Only Senator Rand Paul, probably the most prominent person in America, who refuses to get the vaccine because he says, I had the disease already. I don't need the vaccine. If this is just like every other disease, then I'll be just fine. And you shouldn't be able to make me get it. Yet here we are. We're in a society of fear and compulsion, all based on a disease that, if you are not in a certain comorbidity group, are under virtually statistically zero chance of death. This is insane. And this, if people don't push back at this, I don't know what I'm going to do, but if people don't push back at this Delta variant panic porn, I don't know what much of this country is left.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's just like one of these like media fads, like the South African variant or whatever. It just kind of was in the news for like a week. And it kind of went away. I'm just kind of hoping that this stays in the news for like no more than a month, and then people just like, no, I'm gonna go along with my summer. That's what I'm hoping for.
The only hope that I hold, and I don't hold much hope for Americans to be logical or rational or not fear-based at this point, but my hope and my prayer is that enough of the kind of apolitical people who just kind of go along with go with the flow, whatever the government says, they've gotten vaccinated. And, a lot of these people were sold on the idea that like, we just got to get to herd immunity with vaccinations. And once we do that, we'll be going back to normal. I'm hoping there's enough of those people who have gotten vaccinated and have returned to normal life that when they try to do this again, they're gonna put their foot down and say, right, absolutely not. I've followed the rules. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I'm taking my life back now, and I don't care what you say.
Yeah, and and for like the number that you threw out there about like the 4 in 100,000, something like that like the adverse effects of a vaccine, that doesn't necessarily like dissuade me from getting a vaccine. But it's enough for me to say that like they shouldn't be mandated. Like I think that we can all probably agree on that.
Right. If this was something other than a vaccine that harmed people at this rate, it'd be banned.
Right.
If a medicine or any treatment harmed people to this regard, it would never have been approved by the FDA.
Especially if it was fun.
Right. Now look, I got the Moderna vaccine and I got my second vaccine. And did I have side effects? Yeah, I think I did. I didn't feel good for about a week. Every couple days I just feel randomly not myself. I feel fatigued. I can still have my sense of taste and smell and all that, but I've had side effects from the vaccine, and frankly, I don't know if there are going to be any long-term side effects to the vaccine. And that's the thing; nobody knows. It is a miracle that this vaccine was able to be produced as quickly as it was, thanks to Donald Trump's Operation Warp Speed. But the people who take it, most of them are going to be fine, but not all of them will be. And we don't know what the long-term effects of this vaccine are, and that is a little concerning to me. But I already did it, so I'm going to have to live with my choices as well.
Jim does have a third arm growing out the side of his back right now, though. So I'm not sure if that's vaccine related, but...
Well, I get to scratch it makes it a lot easier to scratch the middle of my back, I got to say.
All right, well, we've only got a couple of minutes, but we do have a couple of emails that we had gotten in mailbag. If you've got questions, concerns, comments, or suggestions for the show, you could always email us at inthetankpodcast@gmail.com. So we got a couple. One's friendly. A couple are friendly. One's not so friendly. I'll start off with the friendly one. So this is from Jackie. It says, "Hi guys, I'm fairly new to the show and I love it. I love the format, the banter, which is the best way of getting the facts across. I do have one question. What do you think of climate change being listed on death certificates as a cause of death? Keep the great shows coming."
Has that happened?
So I asked one of our experts about this, and he said that he'd seen this being proposed, but he hasn't actually seen it in practice. And he responded with how it's just lunacy, and if somebody's death was caused by a weather event, that's a weather event, and not can't be correlated with some moderate century-long warming trend or anything like that. So he thinks that it's ridiculous, and surely it's just a political thing if it actually is taking place anywhere in the country.
If it is, I'm fine with it, because we can start doing the reverse. So like if someone dies, if they're like shot by the police defending themselves or something like happened recently in, I think it was Colorado, can we list like violation of individual liberty on the death certificate as
right, unconstitutional practice?
Yeah, right, yeah.
All right, I got one more. Or Jim, we've only got like a minute left. Should I do the hate mail? Should I do the hate mail one?
Do the hate mail one.
Do the hate mail one.
Okay, all right. Nate, settle yourself. This is about you. All right, so this is from a gentleman named Dan, who refers to us as Heartland Podcast Yabbers. I have only so many hours in a week to listen to podcasts. I subscribe to 29 podcasts, with 5 in the wings if I feel like possibly giving them another listen once in a while. I listen to podcasts, and I think I listen to like 6. Like,
yeah, that's 29. How can you find 29 good podcasts? I don't know. Anyways,
I don't recall why I subscribed to Heartland. Yada yada yada. But in episode 299, June 18th, 2021, the one where you complained bitterly how you're losing reach because of big tech and depend on alternate backup sites to get your message out, and you just don't have any help in government at all. At the 59-minute, 2-second mark, you stated, look, I'm not, never have, and never will be a Trump supporter. I just not. Now, that was, I believe, Nate that said that quote. So tell me again, going back to the letter. So tell me again why I should give 2 shakes if Heartland survives or not. If you can't see why 75 million plus Americans voted for Trump back in office, and you believe that Oatmeal for Brains received 81 million votes, I have no need to continue listening. In fact, I've listened to episode 299 twice just to make sure what I had heard, even though the comment was in the last minute. So I don't know why you listened to the entire hour twice, but whatever. What
really
you
specific
said,
about the time markers, but had to listen to the whole podcast. Anyways,
right.
Sorry.
What you said tells me all I need to know about trusting Heartland content. I'm too ideologically distinct from him to really sign on to his whole campaign. Again, said Nate, apparently. Who are you going with? Liz Cheney? Mitt Romney, McConnell, McCarthy, National Review, Reason, the Hey Google, Twitter, and Facebook are private companies. They can do what they want. Wait, they just canceled us. That's not right. Libertarians? You got what you wanted. Joe Biden, the Dems in control instead of Trump. Now you expect me to subscribe so I can listen to you complain and belittle Trump? No thanks. Why are you complaining about how you're being treated? You got what you wanted. You're worse than Ed Driscoll at Independent. At the 59-minute mark, 56 seconds of episode 299 on Sunday, June 27th, 2021, after a second listening, I unsubscribed from the Heartland podcast. See ya. I now have 28 podcasts. Have fun talking to your fellow Never Trumpers.
Okay.
And before Nate jumps in, because I remember when he said that. And I was going to jump in and say, like, oh, yeah, the pro-Trump stuff is reserved for me. Because I've always openly presented myself as a pretty big Trump supporter for the last, 4 years on this podcast.
So, first off, if you're that petty to write us that email, good riddance. We don't want you listening to the podcast if you're going to be that way. Second off, I'm a pretty hardcore libertarian, so I'm not going to be the biggest fan of Donald Trump. Third, I was defending Trump. I was defending him on January 6th. I don't think you can get any more controversially pro-Trump than defending him about the January 6th incident.
Right. Those comments, it was like a prelude for you to say something positive about him.
Yes.
And Jim, if there's anyone that's more pro-Trump than me on this podcast, it's Jim. So at any given time, there's probably the pro-Trumpers versus the never-Trumpers. We're outnumbering them on any given podcast. So I don't understand where this guy came off, but I thought it was a funny.
And I don't understand how you can think that I'm being anti-Trump when you listen to it twice. If you listen to it twice, then you should have very clearly heard me defending Trump in that instance.
As soon as you said anything negative, he just threw off his headphones.
So I'll just say this. I'll just say this to
Jim.
Dan.
I'm going to give you final word because we're already really long on time here.
I'll just say this to Dan. Do what everybody else does when they listen to the podcast. You hit mute when Nate talks.
Nice. That's a good way to end it. All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I do want to do more of these mailbag sections, especially if you have questions or anything. So absolutely, if you have any questions, or comments or anything like that, email us at inthethankpodcast@gmail.com. You can find our audio podcast every Friday. You can subscribe, rate, or review for us on iTunes. It'd be greatly appreciated. If you want to see our beautiful faces doing the show live, you could always tune in on Thursdays on YouTube and Facebook. Jim, where can the fine people find you?
You can find me at Jay Lakely on Twitter. You can find the Heartland Institute at Heartland Inst on Twitter, and always visit heartland.org.
And Nate Myers, you were a ghost on social media, so just join me saying goodbye to our listeners.
Goodbye.
Thank you all for tuning in. We will talk to you next week.